Hello, bookish friends in the internet. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Drew, and this is Drew's Ambitious Reading. And for today's video, I am very excited. It is that time of month again. It is time for our monthly wrap-up. So this is my January wrap-up for 2023. I am really happy with the amount of books I read. I thought I've read more, but I forgot there's some books that I put down and didn't. I kind of DNF'd it because I'm trying to DNF more books lately, but I'm also just felt a little slumpy. I don't know if it's just because of today, because it's the end of the month and I don't know what to pick up, or if it's just because I had such an amazing reading month that I don't know what to do next. So, without further ado, I want to start off with what do I want to start off with? Should we do our stats first or the ones I'm currently reading? Let's see. Let's do what I'm currently reading first. That way I don't forget about them at the end of the video. And then we'll jump into our monthly reading stats. That's how my brain works. So the first book, I literally just started it today because my book review is due today. But my copy got shipped late because of the crazy snow they had back east. So I am just now starting it and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only like 4 chapters in, so not that far into it. But that is The Wicked Ones by Robin Benway. This is a first book in a brand new fantasy series by Robin Benway. And if you recognize that name, it's because she is the author of Far From the Tree, which I absolutely loved. I cried, and I actually buddy read that with my friend Sydney, and we both loved it. It became an instant favorite for me. I'm not too sure about Sydney, but Robin Benway became like an instant favorite author for me. I have her other book, A Year to the Day, on my February TBR. Spoiler alert for that. And then I also have this one on my February TBR since I did just started it today. Today, as I'm filming this is Tuesday, January 31st. So it is the last day, but this is also a very short fantasy book. So I feel like I can probably squeeze this in. I don't know where to put you guys. I'll put you over here. The next book I put down because I haven't heard any news about book 3 of this trilogy yet. So I was enjoying what I was reading of it, but again, I haven't picked it up because there was no news about book 3, and that is Defend the Dawn by Brigid Kemmerer. Like I said, was really enjoying my read of this. I'm actually not even halfway through, like a quarter of the way through. So I'm hoping I can, again, get this in my February wrap-up. So you might see this again in my February wrap-up, but this is one I'm currently reading. And I literally just put this book down just because I didn't want to rush with the sequel and I wanted to take my time with it. But now that it's been a while, it's been like 2 weeks since I picked this up last, I might have to restart it, and I don't want to do that. So this might be in my February wrap-up. Hopefully it will be, because I really enjoyed book 1. Next is a book I'm physically reading, and I've recently fallen in love with physical reading this month. You'll see that in my monthly stats in a minute. But this one I am 50-something pages into, and that is Erroneous Fate by Kaylee Smith. Excuse me. This is a first book in a brand new witch and vampire hunting type of thing. This cover is just gorgeous, especially with the eyes. The back of this book says, a cursed witch with an unspeakable powers, a charming ex with dark secrets, a mysterious prince with a forbidden future, a deadly sirens with a harrowing past, a shy runaway with a broken heart, all thrust into a demonic forest for an impossible task. They'll soon learn when you play dangerous games, you win dangerous prizes. Like, it sounds amazing, and so far from what I've been reading of this book, it's been amazing. The writing is very easy to follow along, and it's not very, like, chalky, I guess, if that's a word. And the print is very huge as well, which I love for someone who is physically reading. But yeah, as you can see, I'm only 7 chapters in, and I'm on page 55 exactly, so we love that. So again, hopefully this will be my February wrap-up, so you might see this again next month. So going into my monthly stats, I thought about changing my stats this year because I didn't love how they turned out last year. But I'm going to keep it for January, and then if I don't like it in this video, I'm just going to change them in my February wrap up. I don't know what this one piece of hair is doing. It's gonna bug me. Oh well. Anyways, starting off with my stats, my page count this month really shocked me because I've only read 10 books. I read 10 books in January, which is not bad. But my page count was 4,057 pages. My biggest book, let me grab it because it is out of order again. So my biggest book of the month that I read was Ruin by John Gwynne. This was actually the first book that I read this month, so I'll talk about this more in a few minutes. But this comes at 778 pages, and I read all of it. I literally started this in December, and I told you guys might be able to be, you might be able to see this in my January wrap-up, and I was correct. This was my first book that I read for 2023, and wow, did we start off strong. I'll talk more about this in a few minutes when I go into my monthly wrap-up section. But yeah, this comes at 778 pages, and it was a wild ride, and I cannot wait to see what happens in book 4. My smallest book of the month, I've read 2 library books this month, which I'm really happy about because I never really get to my library books. But my smallest book was Scattered Showers by Rainbow Rowell. This was a collection of short stories. I think there was like 9 of them in here. Am I correct? Let's see. First short story collection from the New York Times bestselling author Rainbow Rowell have won fans all over the world, writing about love and life in a way that feels true. In her first collection, she gives us 9 beautifully crafted love stories. Girls meet boy camping outside a movie theater. Best friends debate the merits of high school dances. A prince romances a troll. A girl romances an imaginary boy. And Simon Snow himself returns for a holiday adventures. It's a feast of irresistible characters, hilarious dialogue, and masterful storyteller. In short, everything you expect from a Rainbow Rowell book. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. This was one of my most anticipated reads of last year. Sadly, I give this 3 stars, so I'm not going to talk more about this until I get to my monthly wrap-up section. But just know this was my least favorite of the month. And then going into that, my favorite book this month was one that actually shocked me, but not really shocked me because I love this author. My favorite read was Heatwave by T.J. Klune. I absolutely love this book. I cried at the ending of this book. I knew I was going to cry too because this is the 3rd and final book in this trilogy. Absolutely loved it. It's an instant favorite, and I have 2 other 5-star reads in this wrap-up, but this one is definitely my favorite of the whole month. So I'm excited and happy to say I really love this one. So going into my monthly stats, I have 0 1-star, 0 2-star, 3 3-stars, 3 4-stars, 4 5-stars. 2 of these I read were ARCs. 8 of these were audiobooks, 0 book of the month picks, 1 buddy read, 1 completed series, 0 graphic novels, which really shocked me this month, 2 library books, 2 physical reads, 0 owl crates, and 4 of these books were on my monthly TBR video or on my monthly TBR list. So I'm really happy that I was able not to get to all the books in January because I knew that was a super large TBR that I made for myself, but I am happy with what I've read so far. So jumping into the actual wrap-up, I'm going to start off talking about my book that made me question my star rating. And that is Ruin by John Gwynne. Here's my issue with this book. This book put me in a slump last month, and it also put me in a slump this month as well. I started reading this book for Season-a-thon last month for their winter season, and I was reading this for read a book with an animal companion, I think is what it was, or read a book with magic in it, and this does have both of those in there, obviously, because it's an adult fantasy book. And this is a third installment of a series, so I won't be talking too much about this. But the reason why I say this book is the reason why I question my star rating is because I absolutely love the writing of the series. This series, I fall in love with John Gwynn's writing. I literally just picked up his books last year, and I'm already in love with this third book. But the ending of this book was brutal. I'm not going to say what happens, but if you read this book and you know, please comment down below. I would love to talk to you guys about this. But the ending, I was crying at. The ending broke my heart. I haven't really cried in a book in a while. Like, the last two books that I cried in was Ruin and Heatwave, and funny enough, they're both their third books in their series, so we love that. But the cast in here just grows and grows as they go on, and the fight scenes were amazing to read about. I could just literally picture it as a movie, and I hope it becomes a movie sometime soon. I think the series might be criminally underrated here on book 2, because I don't really hear a whole lot of people talk about this, but thank God I have my friend Taylor with me that I was able to talk about the series with. But I am still pretty pissed off about how book 3 ended, and I'm curious and nervous to see how he's gonna wrap up this world, because there's been a lot of character death in here. So be prepared, get some tissues, get, I don't know, get whatever you need to get ready to cry. But this was really amazing. The reason why I'm conflicting on my star rating is because I want to give this a 5 stars for how much like emotional damage it gave me, but on my notebook here I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because it did give me in a slump, and the book, for me, it took a while for me to get into the third book, because it's been a while since I've read book 2, so I had to get a little refresher from my friend Taylor. But yeah, overall 3.5 stars, not a bad rating, and this was the first book I read for 2023. So the next book that I read for 2023, I wanted something short and easy to read after that. So I picked up one of my most anticipated reads of 2022 that I never got to, and that is Whiteout by Donya Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Wolfolk, and Nicola Yoon. I loved this one. This one's one that I physically read, and my reaction to this book is on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, thank you. You saw my reaction for this book. There was a scene in here that just made me laugh out loud, and I literally like had to go on Twitter to see if anybody else had read this book, because it was just so cute but yet so funny at the same time. If you don't know what this book is, this is a collection. Well, this one's not really a short story collection as much as Blackout was, but this one was still in the same kind of like format. There's different tropes. There's forced enclosement, there is enemies to lovers, there's friends to lovers, they're falling in love in the snow. I absolutely love this. The story with the Beyonce music playing in the background, I forgot which one that was, but that's definitely my favorite new couple. I think it was Omar and someone else. Oh my god, I forgot their names. It was Omar and Jordan, I think. So those two characters were really funny. It was hard to tell who wrote what story, though. Even though in the back of the book, in the author note, it literally says, let's see. Does it say where? I know I said it somewhere. I thought I said it somewhere, or it could have... Oh yeah, it says right here in the author's note, it says, if you're curious about which author wrote which pieces of this big snowy love story, look no further than the following key. Stevie and Solo was written by the self-possessed love grump of the group. Kaz was written by a Christmas queen. ER was written by the only Atlanta native among us, who is also an airport lover. Jordan was written by the only author who is a rapper, which I knew that was Angie Thomas. Jimin was written by the author who had always been a wannabe rock star and whose books always include music, which I don't know who that could be. That could be Nick Stone or Tiffany. And then Ava and Mason were written by the authors who once wrote a kiss scene that lasted 4 pages long. Her editor made her shorten it. Like, that's just so cute to find out like which of these authors wrote what. So I really love that, and I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and it did not disappoint, and I was so happy that I read this and loved it as much as I did. The next book I read was a first book in a new trilogy. I talked about book 1 earlier in this video, and that is Defy the Night by Brigid Kemmerer. I picked this up on a whim because it was in my TBR challenge video that I made. This was for a read a book with the first letter of your first name. And my name obviously is Drew, in case you didn't know, and it has the word defy in it. So I was like, perfect. I've been meaning to read this series forever. This was actually one in the mini series I wanted to start in 2023. And as you can see, I did. I've really enjoyed this. I give this like 4 stars, maybe 3.5, depending on what I feel after talking about this. I found this one to be the slowest out of all of Brigid's work, just because I knew the world already and I knew some of the characters in here, because this is set in the same world as the Cursebreakers trilogy, which was kind of a letdown for me, so maybe that's why I'm a little harsh on this world. But I did really enjoy the romance in here. There was like a slow burn romance, which was amazing. I hope that develops more in book 2. There was a huge action scene at the end of this book that I was blown away with. I remember finishing this book at my grandma's house being like, what? That's how they end this book? And I really love it when books can like get a reaction out of me, you know? So it's just a fun, enjoyable YA fantasy. Is it one that I will keep reading and recommend to people? Maybe not, but it is one that I will say if you want to get into fantasy, and if you haven't read a whole lot of fantasy, I would say start with Brigid Kemmerer, because her writing does feel like it's contemporary even though it's in a fantasy world. The characters were easy to follow along. I really shipped our main 2 characters together. Overall, I would say this is a solid 4 stars, and I cannot wait to see what happens in book 2. Next book I read was one that I buddy read. I buddy read this with my friend Donna over at Mom's Book Collection. I'll leave her channel down below. Go check her out. And we buddy read The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gold. Excuse me, sorry. The reason why we buddy read this book, this is a YA thriller that is a standalone novel, and this was twisty and dark AF, because I was not expecting it to go as dark as it did, and it went dark. It really did. The reason why we picked this book up together is because we wanted to partake in the buzzword, and the buzzword was for life and death. And Kayla from Books and Lala, she said that dead can work for it as well, because like and the same thing as death. So I picked this up and I asked Donna if she wanted to buddy read this, and we read 100 pages a day, and we finished it in like 3 days, and it was just such a fun read. I give this a 5 stars because the twist in here was so crazy that I was not expecting it to go that way. There is mention of like drinking and alcoholism, if that's a trigger warning. There is a trigger warning page in here, I think. Yeah, it says, some of the thematic materials in The Dead in the Dark involves a child death and endangerment, violence included, strangulation and drowning, and homophobia and homophobic slurs. For more detailed description of sensitive content, please visit goldbooks.com/book/TDATD. So, yeah, there is a bunch of trigger warnings, like I just said. It was very hard to read at some parts of the book, but it was a book I think everyone should read, because there is 2 gay dads in here, which I love that representation. And they're set with, the only thing that was a bit confusing about this book was the amount of side characters we had. And I feel like Donna had the same complaint about this as well. It was hard, especially for me, because I listened to this one via audiobook. It was hard to point out which side character was which and which best friend was dying next, you know? There are character deaths in here, obviously, and they're set in a small town setting as well, which I really loved. And there's a female-female relationship in here, which I really loved as well. So overall, this was a 5-star read. It was such a fun buddy read, and I cannot wait to buddy read more with you in 2023. Buddy read more with you, Donna, in 2023. That's what I was trying to say. But I'm so happy. I really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see what Courtney Gold has in store for us. I believe she has a new book coming out in June of this year, so that will be exciting to read. The next book that I read, I was in a mood for something similar to The Dead in the Dark, and so I picked up 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson. This was another most anticipated read of mine from last year. Despite this one coming out in December, I was still looking forward to reading this one. And I didn't get to it in December, but I did manage to get to it in January. And this was the book that I read for the New Year's Readathon, which was hosted by Donna over at Mom's Book Collection and Amanda over at Amanda the Biblio, I believe is her channel name. I'll leave both of them down below. I mean, I've already mentioned Donna. But their New Year's Readathon happened the 7th through the 14th, and I managed to get to 2 books. One of them I'll talk about in a few minutes. Anyways, I'm getting so winded out. This is the 5th installment of the series. I really love the original 3 books in the Truly Devious trilogy. And then I read The Box in the Woods last year when it came out. And I loved it. I loved the twists and turns. And this one was nothing but the same amount of love that I gave the rest of the books. I just love how Maureen Johnson can interweave the past into the present and yet combine them at the same time without it being confusing. That is the one thing I loved. And just like the setting of being in... I haven't been to London myself, but like being in London in a physical book form, that was just so fun and interesting to read about. There was a bunch of twists and turns in this book as well that I did not see coming. There was also a representation of a character in here. I'm not going to say here who it is because I want you guys to enjoy it yourself and find out who it is. It's one of my favorite characters that I really loved and was rooting for. But yeah, overall, I would say this is a fantastic book. And I'm curious to see if there's going to be a 6th installment of this world. Because it kind of ended, not open-ended, but it also had it was open-ended a little bit. And it was also a little bit of a cliffhanger. If you read this book, you kind of know what I mean. But there was a scene that made me yell at Stevie. There was a scene that Stevie did that was so stupid of her. I literally had to text my friend Mandy over at The Bookish Girl here on Instagram. I had to text her because she actually read this book before I did. So I was like, how can Stevie do that? But yeah, I love the writing. I love Maureen Johnson's writing. I want to read her Backlist series. I forgot what it's called, but I know she has another series that I definitely want to try and check out. And hopefully sometimes in 2023, I can get my hands on the original 3 books in hardcover and then they will look amazing on my shelf. So yeah, overall, I really enjoy this. This was a 5-star read for me and I cannot wait to see if there will be a 6th book or not. The next book that I read was a shorty but a goodie, and I actually physically read this one as well, and that was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldee. My friend Sydney bought this for me, I want to say back in November, or maybe even for Christmas. I was reading this for the New Year's Readathon as well. This was for the prompt of read a book that was gifted to you, and this one was obviously gifted to me, like I just said. This was kind of a letdown for me. Like, I enjoyed it because it was a fun, cute romance with a mix of fantasy in it, set at a coffee shop. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt kind of meh about it. I gave it 3 stars, so I'm a little harsh of giving it 3 stars, but there's supposed to be like a prequel coming this year, so I'm curious to see what's going to happen in that one. But overall, I did really enjoy how quick and fast read it was. It literally took me a day to read this. And I just love the romance. There was a scene in here that made me laugh. I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil you guys, because it's hard to talk about books that I love and which scenes made me laugh and whatnot. But I did love how short these chapters were. I was not expecting that going into this book, because I was like, oh, it's kind of a hefty book. I mean, it's not as big as Ruin by John Gwynne, but it's still kind of a hefty fantasy book, and I thought it would be hard to concentrate on a physical reading of this one, but I actually really enjoyed it more that way. So I really did enjoy this. I would say it's a 3.5 out of 5 stars maybe. But yeah, this is a fun, I can see why it's very popular, cozy fantasy read. And I want to read more in this genre, so if you guys have any more recommendations, let me know down below. The next book that I read was one of my favorite reads in the month, and I've already talked about this book, so I'm not going to talk about it for too long, but that is Heatwave by T.J. Klune. This is the third and final book in the Extraordinary Trilogy by T.J. Klune. This is the 5th book that I read by him, so I definitely want to read more by this author as well. So Clint, I'm looking at you. I need some TJ Klune Rex, please. Clint from Read Reader is an amazing friend. I'll leave him down below as well. Anybody who I mention, I'll mention them down in the description box below. Oh my god, I cannot speak. But like I said earlier in this video, I absolutely cried at the ending of this book. It was so sweet. I loved how everything wrapped up. I loved the fight scene in this one as well. If you love the Renegade series by Marissa Meyer, I think you will love this trilogy. They're like super similar, but this one is more like diversely, I guess you can, and funnier, I would say, especially with Nick and his dad. I said this before with the rest of his series, but I honestly really loved their relationship together, and it was just so fun to read about. And I love the ending. The ending wrapped up perfectly, and I can't say much more without spoiling it, but I just love TJ Klune's books, and I cannot wait to check out more from him in the future. The next book that I read, I almost skipped one. I physically read this whole book as well. This was a book I did for Jamie over at Rockstar Book Tours, because this was one of my tour books that I needed to get to, and I managed to physically read all of Retro by Jared Schusterman and Sophia Lepenti. This is a first book by this author duo, and I was really excited for this because I loved Jared Schusterman's writing in the past, so I knew I would love this writing in here as well, even though it is co-written by his wife. This was an interesting read. I never seen a book, maybe there is a book out there that done it, but I never seen a book where it talks about suicide but in like a gentle way. There was the suicide mentioned in the beginning of the book, which I did not realize there was. I think there was trigger warnings for it though, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. There was no trigger warnings, my bad. But the one cool thing about this book is that there's a playlist in here that you can listen to with a bunch of like oldie songs. Sorry to all my old followers. As you can see from all the tabs, I really loved this one. I tabbed this one up. This was like the only book I tabbed up this month, I think, which is so weird that this is the only one that I tabbed despite me having so many 5-star read. I feel like there could be a sequel to Retro, but I also feel like this left on a good note with the series. This is a fun story where there's a challenge where you try not to use your phone, try not to go on the internet, try not to like watch TV a whole lot, and you just be retro and you just like live your life like it's the 90s. And that was such a fun experience to read about in the book. There's also a car race in here, which I was not expecting. That was intense. The last 75 pages of this book, I was like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Like literally you can see it. I tabbed like 3 or 4 things on the last couple pages just because there was so many great quotes and funny scenes that happened throughout the book. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I would say this is a YA thriller with a mix of contemporary in here. There's an enemies to lovers in here, which I freaking love, as you guys know. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I give this 4 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely check out more by this author duo when they come out with more books. But yeah, check out Retro. It's out now. Came out January 24th, and I can't believe I physically read a 400-page book. Next book is one that I've already talked about as well, and that is Scattered Showers by Rainbow Rowell. Like I said, I've already talked about this. I give this 3.5 stars, so I'm going to move on to my next book. The final book that I read for the month of January, I actually just finished this morning right before filming, and that was The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. I freaking loved this one. I didn't love it as much as I loved the first book of the Cruel Prince trilogy, but reading this one and just binge reading it over the weekend was just an enjoyment out of itself. It was a bit slow for me in the beginning just because we're following different characters but set in the same world as the Cruel Prince. So I don't know if you would need to read the Cruel Prince in order to read this. There are mention of Jude and Cardan in here, but they don't really like the main characters, if you know what I mean. There was the ending of this book shocked me. I need book 2 like ASAP, and I'm curious to see where we're gonna go in book 2, and this is very hyped and popular here on book 2, so I'm not really gonna talk much about this one, but I would say I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. So there you have it. That is my long-winded January wrap-up. I am so sorry it was such a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, though. If you did, please give me a big thumb up. Hit that subscribe button, turn your notification on so you don't miss any new videos coming from me soon. What was your favorite read and least favorite read in the month of January? I would love to know, and I'll talk to you guys down in the comments below. I hope you have a great day or night or not. The choice is yours, and happy reading. Bye, guys.